Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Toronto. It is so good to gather together to co-create sacred space that rejuvenates our lives and our spirits on this spring morning. We're grateful to have you with us. I'm Angela Clausen, Director of Lifespan Religious Education, joined by our Associate Minister, Reverend Lynn Harrison, Director of Congregational Music, Dallas Bergen, and our pianist, Adam Sakiyama. It's a special joy for us to welcome today storyteller Norman Perrin, and we're deeply grateful, as always, for our AV engineer, Matthew Rideout, who is serving behind the scenes. As we begin, we acknowledge that Toronto is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Ojibwe, Chippewa, and the Wendat. Wherever we may be, may we renew our commitment this day to appreciating our interdependence in keeping with our seventh principle, so that we can begin to heal the damage done by attitudes of dominance, first over the earth, and by extension, one person over another in the ongoing and essential work of reconciliation. And now, as we begin our service, I invite you to light a candle or chalice if you have one nearby, and to join with us in our chalice lighting words. As we light our chalice, may its flame kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the glow of love, the fire of commitment, and the light of truth.
Let us call one another to worship today by joining together in singing. You can sing along with me, joining in harmony with you if you wish, or creating around this simple song that celebrates how we are gathered here. I'll sing it once through, and then the words will appear on your screen. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Spirit, draw near. From our many and varied paths, we arrive here to build within and beyond these walls a community of commitment, love, and hope. Let us continue to join our voices as one by speaking the words of our covenant. Love is our doctrine, the quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all.
I bring you news of the life of this congregation. You're invited to stay for small group discussions following the service today. There will be a prompt and a guiding question at the end of the service. And if you're a newcomer among us today, you're welcome to join in those randomized chat groups, or you're also welcome to join a newcomer discussion Zoom meeting. We'll post the link for that at the end of the service. It's also available on the website. We're happy to answer any questions and offer you a warm welcome here. Today is the last day for registrations for the Canadian Unitarian Council National Conference happening next weekend, with events Friday through Sunday. The conference is happening online via Zoom. I invite you to check out the website for all of the programming offered. Once again, today is the last day for registrations. And concurrently, we have the virtual youth conference through the Canadian Unitarian Council. That's for youth ages 14 to 19, and those connected with our congregation. Midnight tonight is also the deadline to register for that. Our youth advisors, Lisa Trenton, Nicole Johnson, and DLRE, Angela Clausen, are the adult sponsors of youth from our congregation at this time of workshops, worship, games, and community building with UU youth across Canada. And this Thursday, not to be missed, Thursday night at 7 p.m., our congregation, First Unitarian Toronto, will be featured as part of Sharing Sacred Spaces. I invite you to check the Sharing Sacred Spaces website for details, but this happens at 7 p.m. on Thursday this week. And our great thanks to Kim Sotarski for directing and producing a wonderful video showcasing the life and work of our congregation, our Unitarian Universalist beliefs, and our worship space. And many thanks to the many people who were involved and contributed to that. You don't want to miss that. Thursday at 7, Sharing Sacred Spaces. Also in our usual lineup of congregational weekly activities, you're welcome to join the Monday meditation group, Tuesday morning awakenings drop-in, and Thursday evening reflections drop-in groups. Details of those can be found in First Light. And I refer you to First Light to keep abreast of all of the congregational things happening. And we could actually use a little bit of help with First Light if you're willing and have some editing experience and some technical. It would be wonderful to get some support with Tanya Cawthron, who does a marvelous job compiling all of the content and having that go out every Friday. But we're looking for another editor and someone who would help to send that out on Fridays. That time commitment is 1.5 to 2 hours a week, and it would be a wonderful contribution to the congregation if anyone is able to help. So I invite you to subscribe to First Light again to keep on top of all of the details, and refer to the website regularly for content about what's happening in the congregation. I invite you to continue to find a stillness as we enter our time of meditation or thoughtful contemplation or prayer. I offer you a reading from Rainer Maria Rilke. And yet, though we strain. And yet, though we strain against the deadening grip of daily necessity, I sense there is this mystery. All life is being lived. Who is living it then, Is it the things themselves or something waiting inside them like an unplayed melody on a flute? Is it the winds blowing over the waters? Is it the branches that signal to each other? Is it flowers interweaving their fragrances or streets as they wind through time?
In this time of hope and possibility, we are reminded with each passing day of the sacred truth that our lives are linked in essential and sacred ways. As we now honor the joys and sorrows that we share, let us affirm anew that what touches the life of one of us affects us all. Today, our hearts are heavy with the news of an especially violent outbreak in Jerusalem, of the horrific attack on a girls' school in Kabul, and of the ongoing COVID-19 crisis in India. Our prayers are with those now grieving loved ones, those recovering from illness or injury, and with all family members watching these events unfold from afar. We hold in loving care all who are struggling to maintain their mental or physical well-being, all who are in recovery, and those finding new ways to adapt and cope with the ongoing effects of illness or aging. On this day, traditionally celebrated as Mother's Day in North America, we hold in the sanctuary of our hearts all those for whom this may be a complicated day, as we also rejoice with everyone who is celebrating all who have nurtured us in so many ways and at every stage of life. Finally, we pray for strength and hope for all healthcare and frontline workers in this incredibly difficult third wave, for all who continue to await their vaccination day, and for all whose livelihoods and job prospects are affected now. May we all find sources of strength, patience, and courage to sustain us. Because a sorrow named is a burden shared, let us now lift up the other concerns or sorrows that weigh on us this day by typing them in the chat, by speaking them aloud, or by holding them in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. I'll do my best to read them aloud as you enter them. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please remember to enter your joy or sorrow early so that we can be sure to include it, taking a slight lag into account. Lindsay is holding her friend Jim, who is living through a difficult cancer in her heart. Doug was sorry to see an obit for Lynn Torrey's father in the Star. Thank you, Doug, for bringing that up. Tanya Cothran's sadness at the sudden death of our friend Harold on Friday. Tanya, our hearts are with you and with Harold's family. Rilla Clark, thinking of all those who are food insecure and shelter insecure, as are we all. Thank you, Rilla. Nicole Johnson, thinking of her grandmother's brother who was just diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Nicole, we're sending care to your grandmother's brother. And Beth, concern for Colombia, where the president has canceled Mother's Day because the streets are filled during COVID with people protesting more basic grievances under a repressive, violent regime. Beth's son and his family are hunkered down as they have been for the last year. Beth, we are sending care to your son, his family, and all who are living under this regime. Lynn Atkin Phillips, as for many of us, Lynn's heart breaks thinking of the 2 Michaels still in captivity. Sally Moore holding her friend Ruth Arnold, who was rushed to hospital. And Matt, unable to find a vaccine appointment among the new pop-ups in Toronto, feeling frustrated with the provincial rollout, indeed. And Chloe and Jack Main, and perhaps Liz, the loss of Peggy Dover, an incredible force in the environmental sector of Canada. May all that has been shared and all that remains unspoken be lovingly held in our hearts and minds. Moving now to our blessings, as our gratitudes can be a sustaining force in times of uncertainty and challenge. I can start us off by sharing that at the annual general meeting of the Canadian Unitarian Council yesterday, the CUC adopted an 8th principle. We, the member congregations of the Canadian Unitarian Council, covenant to affirm and promote individual and communal action that accountably dismantles racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. The motion to adopt the 8th principle followed the report of the Dismantling Racism Study Group and was not on the agenda. Delegates voted to suspend the rules of procedure to allow this motion, which was carried by a majority. In the weeks and months to come, may we live into our highest aspirations as people who value justice, equity, and compassion. We have some gratitudes from Jules Krause, who's slowly recovering from the mild concussion as a result of a bike accident a couple of weeks ago. Grateful for everyone who reached out. Jules, we're holding you in our thoughts as you continue to recover. David is grateful that Randy's medical procedure the other day was successful and that he is well and on the road to recovery. That's good news. From Hope Paul, thanks for all the condolence messages. Margaret Kaur, joyous that my youngest son, Jason, has an appointment to be vaccinated tomorrow morning. And Julith sharing that her sister Beverly got her first vaccine. Heather McIntosh, happy birthday to Estelle tomorrow. Happy birthday, Estelle. From Barbara Park, grateful for my recent engagement. I am excited to build a new life. What momentous news, Barbara, congratulations. And from Sue Hansel, a fun movie watch party over Zoom with my sister and some friends last night. Also sharing joy that all children across school boards in Toronto will see the pride flag fly at their school every June following the recent decision of the Toronto Catholic District School Board. Matt is sharing a joy for cool spring walks in the River Valley. And Wendy Peoples and Peter Bryden celebrating mothers everywhere today. Marilyn, grateful to come across the Canada Goose family, and there are 9 goslings by the Humber yesterday. Bronwyn Oatley sharing this past week, they started a new part-time job writing about philanthropy. They're thrilled about the chance to raise some important questions and shake some things up a bit. Thank you, Bronwyn. And now, will you join me in meditation and prayer? Spirit of life, the divine known to us by many names and beyond all naming, we give thanks for the gift of this day, for this time to pause, to be together, and for all that has been so generously shared among us here today. We give thanks for this day, another opportunity to live the lives of kindness, purpose, and peace we so desire. As the days of spring and the richness of nature's gifts unfold, may we pay attention to the beauty around us as a source of sustenance, comfort, and joy. May we find that we have yet untapped reserves of perseverance, patience, and courage amidst all that is troubling to our hearts and minds. May we know that we are held by love, each and every one of us on this day and all our days. This we seek in the name of all that is sacred. Amen, and blessed be.
It is our great joy to welcome to our service today storyteller Norman Perrin. Welcome, Norman.
It's good. Good to be here. I'll start this the way I have always started a story. There's an old Russian proverb that says the story is a lie, but the telling is truth. And it'll be up to you to decide how much of a lie and how much of a truth I'm about to tell. Once in a far-off kingdom, there were 4 sons born to a king. And each one of them had heard of a story called the Red Bud Tree, the most magnificent tree in a far-off land. But none of them had ever seen it. They wanted to see it. So the oldest decided to sneak away one day and go to the charioteer and says, I want to go and see the Red Bud Tree. I'm told you know where it is. The charioteer did know where it was, but so he took him. It was a long, hard journey. And he came to a beautiful tree. And it was the winter time. It was a hard journey. And the young man looked at the tree. Oh, that's the magnificent tree. And so he went back. And the second son said to the charioteer, will you take me? And the charioteer said, but it's a long, hard journey. Take me. And so once again, the long, hard journey was made. And the young prince saw the tree, the magnificent red bud tree, and said, what a beautiful tree. And went back happy. And the third son, well, when he remembered that he wanted to see the tree as well, he went to the charioteer. And the charioteer looked at him and says, let me guess. You want to go? Yes, the red bud tree. And then when they went, again, a long, hard journey, the young man said, I don't see what's so magnificent about this tree. It's not much to it. And they went back. Well, when the last son had heard that the other three had gone, he said, okay, I'm going. It's my turn. And once again, the poor charioteer had to make that long, hard journey. And the young prince saw the tree, said, oh, this is a very nice tree. It's a very useful tree. I like this tree. And he went back happy. And so the four princes, the four brothers, got together and said to discuss the beautiful red bud tree. And the first one said, I don't know why people liked it. It was a long, hard journey in the wintertime, and it was nothing but twigs and sticks, and it looked dead. That's not a tree. But the second one said, what do you mean? It was a beautiful tree. It was covered in beautiful blossoms. It's no wonder they call it the red bud tree. And the second one said, well, it was a nice tree enough, but I saw no blossoms, and there was nothing but leaves, and I did nothing but sit underneath the shade. It was nice to sit there, but I don't see why the journey was worth it. And then the fourth son said, but I don't understand either of you, any of you, for the tree was covered in the most delicious of fruit. And underneath the tree, there was this old man picking the fruit, and he shared it with me. And I had a magnificent feast of eating that fruit. And so the four brothers argued, what was the tree really like? And finally they called to the charioteer. The charioteer says, yes, I took each one of you to the same tree. Now work it out. And the four brothers looked at each other, and they sat down and they talked. When did you go? I went in wintertime, said the first. I went in the springtime, said the second. I went in the summertime, said the third. And the fourth said, I went in the fall. And they realized that they had gone to the tree, the same tree, at different times of the year. Each one had seen the tree in a different way. Each had seen the tree in its true form at that time of the year. And so the brothers were reconciled. They did not argue. And the tree, although it still was called the magnificent red bud tree, was given another name. It was called the tree of truth. For truth has many faces and many forms in many places. And when the tree was gone, the four brothers had the branches of the tree made into a beautiful musical instruments, flutes and drums and a guitar. And those flutes and drums and a guitar, while they are spreading the truth around the world to this very day. The tree of truth.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Norm, for that story. And thank you, Linda Layton, for the beautiful image of the tree. My friend was annoyed. She had gotten together with a few friends online to talk about an amazing program they had all just seen. A modern-day magic show, interspersed with wonderful stories by a gifted storyteller named Derek DelGaudio. At the end of the one-man show called In and of Itself, the illusionist performed an amazing trick, the kind of thing that takes your breath away and transports you into a state of enchantment and wonder. My friend loved it, and so she was annoyed when one of her friends proceeded to explain step by step how the illusion was achieved. With that, the bubble of enchantment went poof, and my friend crashed back down to earth. Now, it may have been that the explanation was perfectly sound, absolutely true on one level, and pointing out the falsehood of the illusion. But in that moment, the insistence on rational facts eclipsed what may have been even more illuminating: wonder, mystery, and the blessing of unknowing, that which might be called beginner's mind. When we are children, we're often in a state of unknowing, and we certainly don't have a lot of control. Somehow we need to develop the inner resources to go out and contend with the many challenges of the world. In such a situation, stories are very useful. In the well-known book, The Uses of Enchantment, The Meaning and Importance of Fairy Tales, Bruno Bettelheim wrote, "It is important to provide the modern child with images of heroes who have to go into the world all by themselves and who, although originally ignorant of ultimate things, find secure places in the world by following their right way with deep inner confidence." Putting it even more simply, this from the author G.K. Chesterton, fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. Well, isn't it true that at every stage of life, we hope that dragons can be beaten? And isn't it true that in the face of big and scary unknowns, we often feel as helpless as children? At times like these, we might be wise to open up once again to the wisdom of story, myth, symbol, dream. All the elements of life that our rational minds may say are not true, but that are doorways to the direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder that leads to a renewal of the spirit, as it is expressed in the Unitarian Universalist first source of wisdom. One of my favorite writers on the subject of story is Clarissa Pinkola Estes, a Jungian psychoanalyst and writer well known for her 1992 book, Women Who Run with the Wolves: Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype. In it, she writes, "Stories set the inner life into motion. And this is particularly important when the inner life is frightened, wedged, or cornered. It seems to me that some of us might feel that way right now." She writes, "Story greases the hoists and the pulleys. It causes adrenaline to surge, shows us the way out, down, or up, and for our trouble, cuts for us fine, wide doors in previously blank walls, openings that lead to the dreamland, that lead to love and learning, that lead us back to our own real lives." You'll notice that even her brief praise of story sounds like a story, or a poem, or a dream. It's rich in imagery and symbol. Storytellers and artists of all kinds know that often the best way to express a truth is to come at it indirectly. As the poet Emily Dickinson wrote, "Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies. Too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. As lightning to the children eased with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or everyone be blind." We know intuitively the value of that gradual dazzling. Interesting phrase, gradual dazzling. We settle joyfully into it, nestling into the embrace of a good story. For example, if Norman had simply gotten up and said, "You know, everyone has different perspectives. Depending on one's situation in life, we'll each have a different outlook, and none of us is able to see the whole picture. End of story." Well, that wouldn't be very satisfying, would it? In fact, I might go away feeling a bit cranky. Because as often as I've been told that, and I know those facts quite well, I still find it hard to live with that reality. I still find it hard to accept the differences of others' perspectives and to face the fact that there is so much I cannot understand, let alone control. Much like a child, I can find that more than a little frightening. And so I find stories such as The Tree of Truth and the related Blind Men and the Elephant deeply reassuring on a soul level. They teach me, as they have taught many other human beings long before me, that I can learn to live with the dragon of the complexity of the world. As adults in the Western world and in our largely secular society, many of us may have outgrown our love for story. Fortunately, the art of storytelling continues to be intentionally nurtured in many circles. Right now, the Toronto Storytelling Festival is taking place online through the end of next week, with many tellers, including some well known to this congregation, drawing on many wisdom traditions. But as is so often the case in our fragmented world, sometimes we relegate storytellers, like musicians and artists and writers, into silos of skill and specialization. Today, my hope is to reaffirm the deep connection with story that lives in every one of us, just like the child within. Over the course of our lives, some of us, and I'm speaking of myself, may have deliberately turned away at times from story, myth, and symbol as we developed our intellect and reason. This is, of course, a healthy and necessary thing to do as we human beings grow into maturity. It allows us to make choices based on the very real circumstances of our lives, to make practical decisions and effect change to create a more just and loving world. In this worthy effort to reject what is false and face the difficult realities of life, many modern people have dismissed wisdom stories, often overlooking their value. I mentioned the Unitarian first source a few moments ago, the direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder. Well, we also draw from humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. That is our fifth source out of 6, which also include wisdom from many worlds' religions, and earth-centered spiritualities. The humanist UU minister, Reverend Kendall Gibbons, wrote, "Weave me no fairy tales frosted with miracles. Give me a light I can see. Spin me no promise of heavens and saviors. Teach me the truth that makes us free." Some of us may have turned away from other religious traditions, in part because of the stories they told. Stories that may have been presented as literal truth rather than myth or wisdom story, thus leading to a form of idolatry. One can only imagine how horrified an ancient storyteller would have been to learn that a story told for teaching purposes was taken literally by people more than 2,000 years later. Or for that matter, that a story about the storyteller would be presented as literal truth. But of course, that has happened, and often with tragic results. Stories and symbols have been concretized into facts by some, others have rightly objected, and sometimes the enchantment has gone poof, with a cost to our inner lives. The teachers of spiritual wisdom from the major world religions were experts at telling the truth, but telling it slant. Both Buddha and Jesus were known to be tellers of stories, such as the lost coin, the lost sheep, the foolish son, the wise king. Interestingly, you can find stories titled The Woman at the Well, Walking on Water, and The Mustard Seed in both Christian and Buddhist sources. If I had the time or the expertise, I might be able to find similar teaching stories in other religious traditions as well. Of course, the teachers themselves did become the heroes of story, given that they lived so very long ago and were written about long after they died. Wisdom traditions contain stories within stories within stories. The symbols within them recur over and over in our own lives, in our waking lives, and in our dream lives, whether we are consciously aware that we are storytellers or story hearers or not. In this time, when we need to develop the inner resources to meet the dragons of injustice and the dangers of a radically changing earth, it may be time to invite in again the voice of the inner storyteller, who can complement our abilities in rational thinking with the wisdom of the intuition and the imagination. The two need not be opposed to one another. As Bruno Bettelheim pointed out, even Aristotle, master of pure reason, said the friend of wisdom is also a friend of myth. In fact, it may be said that wisdom can only arise when both are present, both the rational and the intuitive. This is the wholeness of life experience that we are called to live into, if not to ever fully understand. In the story Norman told earlier, we heard how human beings could have completely different experiences of the tree of truth. Somehow the tree and the story is able to receive all of them, even the ones that seem to contradict one another. Now, I don't know about you, but this is something my rational mind is very uncomfortable with at times. It goes against my ego's perspective that there has to be a right way and a wrong way, and that it's up to me to figure out which one's which. But the longer I live, the more I'm faced with paradoxes that are very difficult to live with. I'm faced with, for example, the two truths of I am enough, exactly as I am, and I must strive to become a better person. Or how about this one? Every person is inherently worthy, and I oppose everything that person stands for. Life presents us with those dualisms all the time, and no matter how smart we are, it can be hard to make peace with them. But stories, and I would say any form of art, put us in touch with our intuitive dimension, showing us that life is bigger than the small self that has to figure out everything and be right and in control all the time. Story, myth, and symbol open up space for what is larger than our ego's perspective, connecting us with the much larger tree of truth, which includes everything. Stories take us deeper, deep below the surface of our own personal perspective, to the deep ground of life, which contains all. It is from that deeply rooted place of wisdom, from the ground of our collective unconscious and intuition, that compassion and love can grow. From the deep self, from the source, from the divine, from the tree of truth, or any other name you may use or not. So listen for the stories, the ones arising within you and the ones that come to you from so many different sources. As Clarissa Pinkola Estes wrote, I hope you will go out and let stories, that is, life, happen to you, and that you will work with these stories. Water them with your blood and tears and your laughter till they bloom, till you yourself burst into bloom. That is the work, the only work. I'd like to finish with a musical story for you. On the one hand, this is a story about parenthood, a true story, if you will, and it was inspired by a real event. But I hope that it will also point to the value of story for all of us, and whether we are biological parents or not. This song is a reflection on how, as human beings, we all too often fall under the spell of thinking that we could be all-powerful and all-knowing. In fact, the magical beings of symbol, myth, and wonder, they may be more powerful than we realize, and we may need them more than we know. She made you out of magic. She helped you make believe with fairy tales and pixie dust and tricks tucked up her sleeve. She wanted to be perfect and omnipotent and kind. But late last night the magic, well, it must have slipped her mind, 'cause the tooth fairy forgot she wanted to remember. Her heart's in the right spot, but the tooth fairy forgot. She sees that you are growing up. She hopes you'll understand that mommy's just a woman, yeah, and daddy's just a man. But when she saw you crying there, with hope still in your eyes, she conjured up a morning story, wrapped you in sweet lies, 'cause the tooth fairy forgot. She thought she would remember. She gave it her best shot, but the tooth fairy forgot. It was camouflaged beneath the sheets before the bed was made. She must have missed the time change, and her magic was delayed. I blurted out that it was me, but surely made it up, 'cause only a far greater power could make this strong a love. Well, Santa Claus, he came today. The Easter Bunny too. And they gathered round the tooth fairy. They taught her what is true. They told her it will be all right. A greater God forgives. The shiny coin is found at last. The child laughs and lives, 'cause the tooth fairy forgot. She wanted to remember. Her heart's in the right spot, but the tooth fairy forgot. The tooth fairy forgot. She wanted to remember. Her heart's in the right spot, but the tooth fairy forgot. Thank you for listening. It's been such a privilege to be with all of you today. I invite you to stay for the breakout rooms in virtual coffee hour, where you can share with each other how stories are shaping your life. And I leave you with these words from Khalil Gibran. Say not, I have found the truth, but rather, I have found a truth. Say not, I have found the path to the soul. Say rather, I have met the soul traveling upon my path. Go in peace. Stay for the coffee hour. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Reverend Lind. How fortunate we are to receive your many gifts of ministry. And thank you all for joining us today. Yes, we invite you to stick around for small group discussions focused on the question, how have stories shaped your life? And if you're a newcomer among us, you're welcome to join the newcomer Zoom posted in the chat. It'll just take a couple of minutes for us to initiate that meeting, but we'll be happy to answer any questions and welcome you there as well. Also, a correction from the announcements earlier in the service. The Sharing Sacred Spaces featuring Toronto First will happen Thursday, May 20th, not this coming Thursday, but the next. And that link is also posted in the chat. Hope to see you there. Thanks very much, everyone. Hope you have a great week and look forward to seeing you soon.